We are hitting week 9 of the Big 12 football season. We've got the full preview. I've got 3 picks for you coming up as well right here on Heartland College Sports covering the Big 12 Conference. Welcome in. I'm Pete Mundo. Thank you for being here as always and joining us as a part of the show. Can't thank you guys enough for what you've done with this show this football season, your subscriptions, your thumbs up on the video, your subscriptions on the podcast have just been tremendous. And I really can't thank you enough. You're sharing the show with friends. You're emailing me about it, Pete Mundo at Heartland College Sports. So thank you, guys. It is a great week for the Big 12, week 9, and we've got you covered here. So let's get right to the top storylines in the Big 12 here for week 9. The biggest thing I'm watching is down in Central Florida, where UCF hosts BYU. And when you look at the trends are not good for teams going west to east. Teams that are traveling multiple time zones are not having good seasons. Whether you want to look at multiple trips made by USC, whether you want to look at Arizona State going to Cincinnati last week. Now, that was a unique situation. They didn't have their starting quarterback, but you get the point. It has not been good for teams who have to make that big road trip to the east. It just hasn't. And now you look at this move, and here's a BYU team coming off one of its worst performances of the year, barely getting by Oklahoma State, needing a late rally to do it in the final couple of minutes of the game. And now, can they go on the road to UCF, where it's going to be Florida weather? We all know how that goes. 82 degrees. I'm seeing the weather for Orlando this weekend. That's not ideal. And that's not BYU football. Okay? That's not what they're looking for. Going to be 82. The Weather Channel says a great afternoon for football. Well, unless you're the team coming from Provo, Utah. Maybe not so great. How does BYU handle that? UCF should be feeling good about itself after they nearly picked off Iowa State last week. I still don't know what this UCF team is. They have this problem called throwing the football, which is not ideal in football in 2024, but they may have caught a little bit of mojo last week. They might have a little bit of confidence. Ja'Cory Brown might be starting to get a little more confident back there. He can run the ball. The question is, will BYU be able to stop that running attack? BYU has been solid on defense this year, but the run defense has been spotty at times. They're in the middle of the pack in the Big 12, giving up 4.8 yards a carry, but it could be much better. Now they got to go to UCF in the bounce house. Place will be popping because they want to see the big upset. And BYU and Jake Retzlaff are going to have to go in there with a steady hand, confident, and make some big plays and have some big moments to get out of Orlando with a win. This is no cakewalk. In fact, UCF is favored by 2 points. That's how much Vegas thinks of the Knights in this spot. And everybody, let's be honest, BYU fans aren't going to like what I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm saying this, let's be clear. But you know as well as I do, everyone is waiting for BYU to get picked off. Not literally, I mean figuratively, like lose a game. No one still, when you look at the analytics gurus, are buying BYU. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just telling you what you already know. People think you guys have gotten lucky. People believe that BYU have gotten bounces and have gotten lucky, special teams plays. That's the reality. I don't agree with it, but you know as well as I do that sentiment's out there. That's part of the reason they're an underdog in this game. Now, I believe BYU is going to win the game, to be very clear. I'm not placing a bet on the spread. I'll give you 3 picks against the spread later in the show. But I think BYU is going to win. I cannot trust Gus Malzahn and this UCF team. They have a lot of talent, and you don't know what you're getting week to week. They look pretty good against Iowa State. They look terrible against Florida. I'm not going near it. But I do believe straight up BYU will get out of there with a win because it's also not an 11 a.m. game. I'd feel worse about it from BYU's perspective if it was an 11 a.m. game. It's a 2:30 game. Their bodies should be ready and adjusted for a 2:30 Central Time kickoff. Their body clocks will think it's what? 12:30? That should be just fine. But now with just 2 undefeated teams left, that's obviously an enormous storyline. because if they hold serve, if BYU runs the table, they're in the Big 12 championship. They have one of those two spots to then potentially, obviously, punch that ticket to the Big 12 championship. And if BYU's undefeated into the Big 12 championship, they're probably in the playoff, win or lose. Unless they just get embarrassed by somebody, they're probably in with a win or a loss. Meantime, you look at the other games. Oklahoma State is on the road at Baylor. I will have a pick in this game. Texas Tech's at TCU. West Virginia's at Arizona. Utah's at Houston. Kansas at Kansas State for the Sunflower Showdown. Cincinnati is traveling to play Colorado. When you look at all of these games, the big question is what happens with the 3-1 teams? The 3-1 teams playing this week, Texas Tech at TCU. You got a road team there. Kansas State is hosting Kansas. And then Cincinnati's playing Colorado. So, and those are both teams that are 3-1 in Big 12 play. So right there, one of them is going to fall to 3-2. Cincinnati and Colorado is basically an elimination game in the Big 12 title race. Put that into perspective. How cool is that? We're talking about elimination games in the Big 12 race in late October. That's what we've got in Boulder late on Saturday night. You have a legit elimination game. Now, Arizona State, I thought they got eliminated last week when they went on the road and lost to Cincinnati. They fell to 2-2. Same thing's happening in Boulder on Saturday night. The loser of this game will be out of the race. The winner will be 4-1 and feeling much better going into the final month of the season. The other two games, Kansas State's playing Kansas as a double-digit favorite, which came as a bit of a surprise to me that it was so large of a spread. And then also you've got Texas Tech on the road at TCU. Tech's got the better record at 5-2 overall and 3-1 in Big 12 play. And I know records don't determine who the favorite is. Just look at UCF and BYU. But still, Tech is a touchdown dog at TCU. That was also a surprising number to me when it came out on Sunday. So which one of these four teams, and only three of them can end up 4-1. Do you get four of them? Do you get three of them to 4-1 or not? Can Tech beat TCU? Can K-State beat KU? And then who wins the Cincinnati-Colorado game? But that will then give us a sense of what we're looking at in the final month. Iowa State's 4-0. They're on a bye. BYU is 4-0. They're playing at UCF. And then at the most, you'll have three teams who are sitting there at 4-1 of those 3-1 teams. But of course, if BYU loses, they're also a 4-1 team. So you will see separation this weekend in the Big 12 Conference with those three games in particular. And the Cincinnati-Colorado game is fascinating because most people didn't have either of these teams in this spot at this point in the season. It's a testament to both coaching staffs. What Deion Sanders has done, what Scott Satterfield has done to turn things around. Because the Big 12 has been completely upended from what was projected before the season. I mean, just look at the standings. BYU projected to be a bottom feeder. You look at Cincinnati, projected bottom feeder. Colorado, bottom feeder. Arizona State, bottom feeder. They're all in the top half. And then you look at the bottom, Arizona, Utah, UCF, Oklahoma State, four teams that we all thought, or at least many of us thought, myself included, would be in contention. They're not. So the standings have more or less reversed themselves from where they were in the preseason projections. So there's a lot of coaches who are worthy of being the Big 12 Coach of the Year if you stacked it up right now. I would give it to Kalani Sitake. I know everyone's talking Deion Sanders, but Kalani Sitake's 7-0. How are you not going to give it to this guy when his team was picked to finish lower than Colorado in the preseason projections? But we'll save that debate for another day. Scott Satterfield, also a guy who no one's really talking a lot about. They're 5-2, and their two losses are by a combined 4 points. To Pittsburgh, which they should have never lost. We've talked about it all season long. And then, of course, the 3-point loss to Texas Tech. They had a couple of big second-half turnovers in that game. They screwed the pooch in that one. They could easily find themselves at 6-1 or 7-0. That's the kind of year it's been for Cincinnati, and they are flying under the radar right now, mostly because of what's happening around them, mostly because the storylines around BYU undefeated, Iowa State undefeated, Deion Sanders doing his thing, right? Arizona State's been a shocker. So because of that, Cincinnati's kind of just sitting back and smelling the roses and saying, hey, don't forget about us. Well, if they win in Boulder this weekend, and that game will do a massive number in the ratings. K-State, Colorado did $3.3 million a couple of weeks back in that late slot. Now, I'm not expecting that kind of a number, $3.3 million, because K-State has more juice than Cincinnati. But it's the same time slot, ESPN, 9:15 Central. It could push easily $3 million, somewhere in that $2.5 to $3 million range. So a lot of eyeballs are going to be on Cincinnati. It's a massive opportunity for the Bearcats to not just obviously get a leg up in the Big 12 race, but get a lot of people to watch a Cincinnati team that have probably not seen them this year, right? I mean, last week, Cincinnati played on ESPN Plus. Just call it like it is. I mean, no one's watching ESPN Plus unless you're a fan of one of those two teams. This is by far the most marquee game they've had. Not even close. They will have more people watch this game than have watched them all season. And that presents a huge opportunity going into this one. Meantime, you look at a game like West Virginia, Arizona. Arizona's favored in this game because West Virginia's a mess. Now, I saw this Thursday night update. Neil Brown announcing on his radio show. Cornerback Aiden Garnes was questionable. He is now out for this week's game. Meantime, you've got a couple of defensive linemen, TJ Jackson, Hammond Russell. They each left last week versus K-State. They're going to be available, as will running back Jaheim White. That's big time. He was out for the second half of that game last week. But we still don't know about Garrett Green and left tackle Wyatt Millam. They are TBD, according to Neil Brown. Both players have upper body injuries, and the bye week is on deck. I don't know what to make of this West Virginia team. I just know that Arizona stinks. I like Nico at quarterback, the backup. I don't think the backup is a big drop-off at quarterback, but still, if he doesn't have his left tackle, one of the best players in the team, and Wyatt Millam, that is as concerning as almost not having Garrett Green at this point. So I don't think Arizona is very good at all. I mean, we saw what's happened the last couple of games against BYU and then Colorado. But if there's ever an opportunity where Arizona has a chance to get back on track, it's going to be this week. I mean, it just makes all the sense in the world that it would be this week. Because if it's not going to happen this week, I don't know when it's going to happen. West Virginia has not been great against the pass so far this season. So if Noah Fafita can finally get some mojo, and the other good thing for him is that West Virginia is not a team that's done a great job getting to the quarterback. So that also sets up a situation where Fafita can actually have some time back there. And part of it's been his fault. He holds on to the ball way too long. But if he can actually get some time back there, you may have a big offensive explosion from Arizona. And if that happens, man, I'm not saying Neil Brown's going to be Lane Kiffin on the tarmac, but there are going to be a lot of unhappy people in Morgantown. And he may not make it to the end of the season if this thing does spiral, especially going into a bye week. I like Neil Brown a lot. He's been a guest on this show. Seems like a really good guy. I mean, I've talked to him personally, before the interviews, really rooting for the guy. And I was very high on West Virginia, and some things, injuries are out of their control. But when you lose 9 straight games to ranked opponents when you're the Mountaineers, that's a bad look for a proud program that's got a lot of history and has had a lot of talent. And in this era, with the transfer portal, and you're Neil Brown, you've had several years to turn this thing around. It's not unreasonable for the fans to start to get itchy. It's not anymore. We are well beyond that. So that is, when it comes to that game, something that is worth watching. Utah-Houston is just a dud of a game. The over-under is 36.5 points. My gosh. First team to 13 wins. That's what it feels like. So I don't say that with joy, but why should I feel any different looking at that game? You don't. I do. It's just I don't. It's an ugly game all around. Utah's out of it. Their season's over. Houston just got crushed by Kansas. So I'm not going near it. It's unfortunately a boring game. It's on ESPN Plus. We'll be monitoring it, but it's not a great game. All right. Now, with that being said, here on Heartland College Sports, I'm Pete Mundo. If you're just joining us right now, do me a solid. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that thumbs up. If you are on YouTube, if you're on the podcast and you haven't yet, I think we're like 5 ratings away from having 800, which once you get to like 1,000 ratings, you're in a very good spot as a podcast. If you haven't done it, could you just hit that 5-star rating right there on your phone right now? You're listening. You're there. You're listening on Apple. Same thing on Spotify. Thank you guys for doing that. Really does make a difference. And that's all we ask. All our stuff's free. Just help us out. Hit a button. Not much more than that. Thank you. Leave a review as well if you feel inspired. That'll take you 30 seconds. So I will give you now 3 picks for Week 9 in the Big 12 Conference. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. Thank you for being here. Subscribe, rate, review. So let's start off with my underdog of the week. I'm rolling with KU plus 10 in the Sunflower Showdown at Kansas State. You might think I'm buying the Jalen Daniels hype too much after what he did to Houston last week coming off of that bye. But I don't believe this is overreacting to one game post-bye week. I don't. Because we've been waiting for this kind of explosion from this offense. We have. And it wasn't an issue of Jalen Daniels being healthy. It was him getting comfortable. He really hadn't played in almost 2 years. He barely played last year. People forget that. And they've led in all 5 of their losses. Now, they've blown them all, but they've led in all 5 of their games in the second half with a chance to win. I am a huge fan of this Kansas State team. But if I'm getting double digits in a rivalry game with a team that's coming off of their performance that appears to have gotten some of that mojo back, that also, I will add, has a great strength at wide receiver, going up against a Kansas State team that if there's a spotty part of the team, it's the secondary. I'm rolling with KU plus 10. You also saw, and you've seen, KU finally get that secondary on their end going. Kobe Bryant had, 3 picks last week? I mean, this is a team that if it can get Avery Johnson just a little bit rattled, could have some success. You saw what happened at BYU. Now, I know this game is at home for K-State. I'm just saying, he's still a young quarterback. If you can get him rattled, that's a great thing. And KU has done a good job getting to the quarterback. In just 4 conference games, they've got 11 sacks. That is second only to Colorado. So look at that and say to yourself, as good as Kansas State's offensive line has been, and Avery Johnson's got wheels, Kansas has gotten to the quarterback. And they've also got 9 interceptions in 4 games. That is tied for the lead in the Big 12. In a rivalry matchup where your team in KU has nothing to lose and K-State has everything to lose, like a trip to the Big 12 championship game potentially, I'm taking the dog and the 10 points in that spot. No ifs, ands, or buts. And also, I will add this. It looks like the big money is on Kansas. 69% of the bets of just the overall bets are on K-State, but the line hasn't budged at 10. That means the 31% of bets on KU are coming in at higher dollar amounts. So I will take Kansas plus the 10 points in this game on Saturday in the Sunflower Showdown. Okay, next up, I will give you a bad bet. What that means is I am on the other side of this pick. Some of you like to goof about that every week. You think it's funny that I explain it, but I'm trying to do it. I could just give you 3 picks, but it's more fun this way. I give you an underdog, I give you a lock, and I give you a bad bet. My underdog is KU plus 10. My bad bet, Baylor minus 7. Baylor has no business being a touchdown favorite over anybody in this conference. Great. They had an awesome game against Texas Tech. Nobody needed that win more than Dave Aranda. But can we not forget that Baylor is 1-13 straight up in their last 14 Big 12 games? Like, can we not forget that, please, here for a second? I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with that, because that is the truth. not been good for the Baylor Bears. When you look at those numbers, I mean, it's just this is their first win. It has not been pretty. And I'll take that back. They did have 2 wins last year. I was going back to 2022 with those numbers, but they had 2-7 last year in the Big 12. So this is not a team that's been good now for going on 3 seasons in this league. And last week was great. And I am somebody who is much higher on Baylor a month ago than many other people. They burnt me in a couple of games, so I stopped picking in their favor. I'm not doing it this week. I'm going Oklahoma State. I know that Garrett Rangel is out. They've got to go back to Alan Bowman, but Oklahoma State showed me something last week. They had a little bit of juice. They had a little bit of pizzazz. They had some fire in that belly, and Mike Gundy is a beast in the month of October. Mike Gundy is one of the best cover guys in the entire sport the last 2 decades in the month of October. This is Mike Gundy's month. Same with Matt Campbell, by the way. Don't bet against those guys in the month of October. Those guys, along with Brian Kelly, are the 3 best college football coaches the last 20 years in the month of October against the spread. Entering this month, over the last 20 years, Mike Gundy's 46-25 in the month of October against the spread. I am not betting against them in this spot. No way, no how. And here's some numbers for you as well with Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is 12-6 in their last 18 against the spread against Baylor. They are 5-1 in their last 6 games against the spread in October. And in week 9, so week 9 is always in the month of October, Oklahoma State is 15-4 against the spread. They are a 7-point underdog in this game at Baylor. Baylor has not earned being a 7-point favorite. Oklahoma State's been bad, but if I asked you before the season what this spread would be, you would have guessed based on talent and preseason projections, Oklahoma State minus 10 maybe, 7-10. I'm getting the Cowboys with a touchdown in this spot. Sign me up, no doubt. I will take Oklahoma State plus 7 in that spot. And then I'm going with another underdog here for my lock of the week. And here's why. Underdogs, just in general, are crushing it in the Big 12. Underdogs are 19-13 in the Big 12 against the spread this year. That's how good this conference has been and how tight this conference has been. Underdogs are 19-13 against the spread. That's incredible. Texas Tech plus 7 at TCU is my lock of the week. And the picks I will note, because I don't hide from these, went 1-2 last week in week 8. I had 2 straight 2-1 weeks. Last week was a 1-2 week. But this is also an overreaction to what happened in week 8. So TCU looks like garbage most of the season. They go on the road, they beat Utah. A Utah team that doesn't have Cam Rising, that looks like it's mailed in the season, that has a lot of issues on both sides of the ball. They win an ugly 13-7 game. Texas Tech gets blasted by Baylor, also coming off the bye week. But this is an overreaction, because if this game was being played a week ago or 2 weeks ago when they were both on a bye week, Texas Tech's probably favored by 3 maybe. Now I'm getting Tech plus 7 in this spot. There's going to be a lot of Red Raiders fans there. TCU is trying to prevent their fans from getting into the stadium, but we know the Metroplex is littered with Tech fans. They're playing right now for something at 3-1 in the Big 12. They're still in the hunt. TCU is not. Joey McGuire is going to have them lit up at practice after how they looked against Baylor last week. That was an embarrassing performance, and I believe they're going to bounce back in a big way. So I'm going to take Texas Tech plus the 7 points as my lock of the week. So I am on KU plus 10 against K-State. I'm on Oklahoma State plus 7 at Baylor. And I'm on Texas Tech plus 7 against TCU. Those are my picks for this week in the Big 12 Conference. I like that. Looks like we got some Tech fans who are going to be there at Fort Worth. Well, make sure you tag us in some of your photos on our Instagram. Follow us over on Instagram, Heartland College Sports. Just search us there. Same thing on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it this week. We are in both of those places. Tag us in some of your photos. I'll put them on our stories on Instagram. I'll put them on the Twitter X page as well. So make sure you're following us on Instagram and on X, Facebook and TikTok and Threads as well. But Instagram and X is where we do a lot of our work. Facebook is big for us too. I'm Pete Mundo on Heartland College Sports. Thank you. And if you haven't done it, you know what to do. Subscribe right below. Hit that thumbs up on the video. Thank you, guys. Week 9 is going to be great in the Big 12. I am so fired up for this weekend. We will have you covered. I'll be dropping in with some videos on the Instagram account as well. Make sure you're over there. And we'll be kicking it on Sunday for the reaction show. That's why you got to be subscribed. The reaction show will be here. Join us live Sunday afternoon. Watch it back. Listen back to the podcast. And we will talk to you soon. I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports. Go Big 12.